Hey, I'm Zach.
And I'm Jesse.
And you're watching Disruptive Investing. We're about to do an interview with the founders of CyberLandr. Let's check it out. All right, so we're fortunate enough to have with us today Lance King, who's the CEO and co-founder, and Bill French, who's the Chief Analytics Officer and co-founder of CyberLandr. And we've been getting so many emails about this, Jesse. You guys launched earlier in April, and I heard that it was really successful. Tell us how it's gone so far.
Rough numbers were 5 times what we had hoped for in terms of orders. And we'll have an announcement probably next week, letting the world know where we're at with all of that. But it's just been overwhelming. We've been really pleased.
And before we get too far into it, I want to talk about what is CyberLandr. For those of you watching who may not know what we're talking about, maybe you guys can tell us an overview of what CyberLandr is.
CyberLandr is a brand new approach to camping, really. We like to say that it's the ultimate adventure vehicle for wilderness and urban adventures. And the reason we say that is because this is the first camper you really can take with you anywhere, meaning off-road in the rugged territory, but also into the parking garage at the mall or through the drive-thru at Starbucks or McDonald's. And so you really can't keep it with you all the time. So we really think we're ushering in a new era of the post-SUV. You know, for 25 years, we've gone from sedans to SUVs. Now almost everybody has one. The question is, what comes next? And we think it's the adventure vehicle. And it's not just for those who want to go off-road into the wilderness. There are plenty of things to use an adventure vehicle for right around town, whether that's the day at the beach or the soccer match. You know, you've got the kids. It'd be great to have a place for them to go to the restroom, keep the snacks cold, that kind of thing. So lots of new uses for this kind of ultimate SUV.
So we're used to seeing an overcamper. Can you walk us through some of the features on the CyberLandr?
So we like to say that you get to take your living room, kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, and office with you anywhere you go. You've got full internet through Starlink now, right? So unlike most campers where the more remote you go, the worse connection you have, with Starlink, you actually have the best connection the more remote you are because you're sharing it with fewer people, right? That gives you the ability to do all kinds of things, whether that's streaming 4K movies to the integrated 32-inch UHD screen, or doing Zoom calls like this one. You know, now that we get to work from home, we can define home as a new thing. It could be the CyberLandr, you know, anywhere in the world, basically.
Maybe we could coin a new term for it as an in-camper as opposed to an over-camper, because this thing fits into the bed of the Cybertruck, and then you can actually, is this true? You can close the tonneau cover over it?
Yeah, so it becomes completely invisible. You know, a lot of people, especially van lifers and that, want something that's kind of stealthy so that people don't know it's a camper. And when this isn't deployed, it looks like any other Cybertruck. You push the button on the app, it deploys, and then you're ready to go.
So can we walk through how that works? So, I mean, because that's, I think, one of the most catching things about the CyberLandr is that it goes from in the bed to zoop, up and out of the bed. Can you walk us through how this is going to work? Because I've never seen anything like this before.
We're using what they call linear actuators, which are basically lifting rods. And they're used throughout industry. In fact, most people have one on the back of their SUV to power lift their tailgate, right? That's a smaller version that's not as powerful, obviously, but same basic concept. So with 4 of those, one at each corner, we can expand it up and bring it back down in just a matter of seconds, you know, about a minute and a half.
We're watching now some CGI of what it's going to look like. And when we see this, the walls are really thin. What are the walls made out of?
Great question. So these are advanced composite panels. They're a polypropylene foam core, very strong. These have been used in things like semi-truck trailers because they're very strong. And they have a skin on the outside of them that's white that you can see there in the CGI. And that skin is FDA approved for food contact. There's no volatile organic compounds, off-gassing like you have in some campers and things. And so it's a very stable, very strong material. In fact, I did an experiment when we first got it and took a 7-foot long piece, 2 feet wide, 1/2 inch thick, and supported it from the ends and stood in the center of it and only had 3.5 inches of deflection with my weight in the center of it. So very strong panels. And that, of course, is what you need if you're going to make something that goes up and down and is thin, right? And so we use those composite panels, and you could leave these submersed in water for years, and they won't delaminate, they won't rot, they won't corrode, they won't break down. So I think it's a great innovation to be bringing into the RV world.
Okay, and then also on the walls are the windows. Can you tell us a little bit more about these windows? Are they glass? Are they, plexiglass? What are they?
Answer C, all of the above. So what we're doing is it's an ABS plastic, a Lexan plastic, right? So it's very impact resistant, very strong, even when it's thin, which is important because they have to be a half an inch thick or less, right? And so we've got dual pane so that there are better thermals on it. And then we have a thin film on the inside for electrochromic dimming. So you can have the amount of light coming through that you want, or have privacy just by saying, hey Lander, privacy, and all the windows will darken. So you're not running around to 6 different panoramic windows trying to close blinds or something when you want to change. When you're done, you just say, give me the view, and you get the view back. And so one of the problems with ABS plastic windows in typical RVs is you have to use microfiber cloth and special cleaners so that you don't scratch it. And we didn't want our users to have to worry about things like that. So we're putting a thin film of glass over the top of that, just like you do on your cell phone when you want to protect that screen. We call it our hybrid glass, right? Because it's glass and Lexan. And so you'll be able to wash these with any cloth, any cleaner, and not worry about them. They're virtually scratch resistant, just like your phone is.
I think one feature that caught a lot of people's attention are the solar panels on the roof, and it looks like these also are going to do some kind of movement as well. They're not going to be fixed. There's one that's going to glide past the other. Can you tell us how much power they're going to make, and what kind of panels are these? They look really thin.
Everybody asks about, wow, they look really thin. And it's true. We're not using the typical ones you put on your roof that have the glass panel with the aluminum frame. That just takes up too much space. But we can we're currently evaluating both silicon crystal and thin film, and we're applying it to that same composite panel that we use in the walls. So it only has to be a half an inch thick to be very, very strong. And so we've got to maximize that solar space and to provide an awning over the rear to keep water and stuff off the stairs, things like that. We have that extend out over the back. Depending on which technology we go with, we'll determine exactly how many watts we have up there. Right now, we're saying 500, but we're hoping to be able to announce something better than that by the time we ship.
Cool. And then, so let's talk a little bit more about the inside. So you got 2 different sinks, one in the kitchen / office / living room area, and then another, it looks like a fold down sink in the bathroom area.
Correct. One of the frustrations in most RVs is the sink, believe it or not. They're usually very small, very shallow. You can't do much with them, right? And that's extra frustrating because you don't have a dishwasher in an RV. And so we said, you know what, we're going to change that up. We're going to give people a sink that they want to use. So the kitchen sink has 3 different levels in it with a colander, a cutting board, a wash bin, and drying racks. And you can move those around to any of the levels. And so you can be chopping your food on one, sliding it off into the colander, rinsing it out there, taking it from there into the bowl kind of thing. So we wanted to make that a workstation so that when you're doing something messy, it's already in the sink and it's super easy to clean up. The countertop space in most RVs is barely big enough to make a sandwich. You can't even put a plate there because the range is in the way. So we said, we want to improve that too. So here in this ultra small camper, you've got a more productive kitchen than you have in many large motorhomes because we have 5 square feet of countertop space, and it's a porcelain counter, so it's easy to clean. And the range is an induction cooktop that's mounted underneath that, so it can cook right through that. And so that combination just gives you a lot more space to work with. And we want it to be a nice, productive environment. So the faucet in the kitchen complements that. It's manual controlled, voice controlled, or touchless control. So if you need 8 ounces of 120 degree water, ask for 8 ounces of 120 degree water, and that's what you'll get. So we wanted to make it really easy so that people are motivated to do a little better cooking than they might otherwise do when they're camping.
So wait, I'm sorry. Voice activated and voice controlled faucet, so I can just say to it what I want for water. Like that in itself sounds like it would take me like years to develop. Is this off-the-shelf technology?
That is off the shelf.
And that's a great way to save water. And speaking of water, so you're going to have 2 sinks and a shower. And I don't see like a water tank in the Cyberlander. And you say that they're recirculating. So can you kind of walk through what the water system looks like for the Cyberlander?
You may have noticed when Elon unveiled the Cybertruck, there was a sub-trunk below the bed of the Cybertruck. That's where the tanks and the pumps go. So they don't have to take up any space inside the Cyberlander. So the plumbing is routed underneath the floor through the insulation layer. So you've got the composite panel, obviously, then an inch of insulation, and then you've got the radiant heated floor with the porcelain on top of that to help radiate that heat. So the plumbing can run through there. So it's a true 4-season RV. And then we can recirculate that water even when it's not being used. We can pump it through the system so we can keep it from freezing and things like that.
So when Jesse and I were in the Cybertruck, we were lucky enough to be at the event. We didn't get to see that sub trunk that you're talking about. I think either it didn't exist at the time or it was just a plate. How are you guys accounting for that now? Because I mean, assume every millimeter counts. So are you just going to have to wait till the Cybertruck comes out to plan that part of it out?
Yeah, we can't do the final specifications until we get Tesla's final specifications, right? But we're actually pretty good at math. And so there are a few things we do know, right? The bed is 6.5 feet long. So once you've got that with a little trigonometry, you can start to figure out how wide it is, how tall it is, how big the trunk is, that sub-trunk and things like that. So we've been able to make some pretty good estimates. But all of that, of course, will have to be fine-tuned before we go into full production.
Now, you just mentioned that it's 4 seasons. When the water tanks go in there underneath, I'm just kind of curious, like on a cold winter night in Minnesota or something, won't that freeze? And then, how would you get water out of it?
So we can actually heat the water in the tank and circulate it through the system. So with our temperature sensors, we can monitor that. So our camper isn't a dumb camper like most campers. So we're putting an NVIDIA processor on there with hundreds of processors. So we can do artificial intelligence, we can monitor systems and things like that, all in real time and all continuously.
It's kind of like taking water into outer space, right? You have all sorts of constraints, and using sensors, we can plan that pretty effectively, along with some AI as well.
And Bill, you know about outer space because you've worked with NASA before.
Yeah, actually, oddly I have. Back in the 80s, I built a little product that helped NASA move data from the Columbia shuttle over to IBM PCs. And as you guys know, I'm not sure you both know, but some of us older guys remember 1980 when IBM PCs were popular. And that application allowed us to move data very quickly. Fast forward, in 1984, that product became LapLink, and LapLink became a pretty big success pre-Ethernet.
While we're on this topic, I think a lot of people watching are pretty interested to know, okay, this sounds really good. I might want to put some money down, or maybe I have. But what do these guys know about making this thing? Because, it is a far cry. Jesse and I talk about it all the time, from, having a CGI model to actually then going into production. So what is your background, and how can we know that you guys can make this thing a reality?
Great question. Thanks for asking. The answer is we've both been in product development our whole careers in one way or another, and lots of different products. And so this is just a natural for us. And we actually like that people say, well, you're a software company. Well, we really weren't. At Stream It, we were doing hardware and software, because the best products today are a marriage of hardware and software. We see that from Apple. We see that from Tesla. So, Tesla was a software company that went into the car business. And what a great disruption that's been. So we are a software company going into the RV business, and what a great disruption we hope this will be. It's time to shake things up. It's been a moribund industry for many, many years.
And I think it's important that we recognize that the word RV is expanding. We've started to become more users of lifestyle choices, lifestyle products that help us understand, some of the boundaries that we can now break. Typically, a camper is used for camping. Campers are typically idle 320 to 340 days a year. We see CyberLandr as something different than that. It's something that really breaks the boundary of that agility that you need. When a moment arises and you realize, wow, I'm in a different city. I didn't plan on staying tonight, but now I can plan on staying. And so those types of scenarios play out to the point where we're not really dealing with RV industry per se, but we are dealing with very similar challenges. We just want them to be acceptable and usable all the time instead of just a few days a year.
So when I first heard about CyberLandr, my first thought was this is very similar to a Kickstarter that all of us have seen before. Usually it's for some new kind of product like a watch or something. The thing that sets this apart to me is the complexity of what you're trying to do. And that's where I guess my question is this like a Kickstarter, or is this more like the first phases of a bigger company? Like, it seems to me that to make this, there's so many components that are going to go into it and so many pieces that normally it seems like the time scale will be longer and you would need like a factory and so forth. But can you kind of walk us through, is this more on the Kickstarter side where you're going to get a bunch of subcomponents and put them together, or is it a more complex problem than that?
It's probably somewhere in between. It's not a Kickstarter product in that it's not a one and done, right? This is a true company. This is the beginning of something very big. And we've all watched Tesla the last few years build gigafactories in a year, right? And get them staffed up and ready to go. It doesn't take as long now as it used to get things done. We don't have the resources Tesla does, so we can't move as quickly as they do, right? So we'll be doing final assembly ourselves, but of course we'll have components coming from many different manufacturers. And, that simplifies all of that quite a bit. But it's not simple at all. Manufacturing is tough. Like Elon says, it's tougher than rocket science, and he would know. He's a rocket scientist. So we know that it's hard. We've done these types of things before. Early in my career, I was a director of operations dealing with, I worked for Dr. Stephen R. Covey that wrote the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And that became the best-selling business book of the next 20 years. We were growing at 300+% a year. And as director of operations, my job was to make sure the company could grow that fast. And so we've been at other startups and things like that. So we're familiar with what it takes to build a company quickly and to scale it. And so without knowing the background, it seems like it's a big, aggressive challenge. And it is. We're not going to discount that. But we think we're up to it. And the enthusiasm from the reservation holders has just been amazing. They just absolutely love it. When you bring out a product, you always hope somebody will like it, right? But they just embrace this in a way that we rarely see. And, most of the comments we've gotten were just overwhelmingly positive. And I'm not used to that, going through YouTube and seeing that many positive comments. You guys know how it is. And so it's been really gratifying to see that. And, that's really driving us. We want to give these people the product that they've seen and wanted, right? And we want to make that vision a reality. And so we're trying to be very aggressive on the time scale because no Cybertrucks have shipped yet, right? And we would like to marry the Cyberlander with the Cybertruck so they're both ready at the same time for our customers. And so that's why we're working so hard around the clock to try and make that happen. Can we achieve it? Well, we hope so. We don't know for sure because we still don't know when the Cybertruck will ship, right? So we think we can have low quantity out by the end of this year and really start to ramp first quarter of next year and be in full swing by second quarter. Still, that's an aggressive timeline. The good news is some of the suppliers are very anxious for this business to make up for business they lost during the pandemic and things, some of which won't come back. And so we think we've got a good shot at it.
And I might add, just to piggyback on that, CyberLandr is not an overnight success. 3.5 years ago, Streamit was formed for the sole purpose of identifying unique ways to use AI in transit. And so there's 3.5 years of blood, sweat, and tears that have gone into our software architecture, over-the-air updates, all of the things that are necessary that we see as underpinnings for for making the machine that makes CyberLandr. So in that sense, we've been working at this for a long time, along with hardware manufacturers, to build the right computers and sensors that make all of our transit applications work well. And so when you take that and transition into something like CyberLandr, it's really just us saying, oh, our stream of technologies are going to be deployed on a different type of domicile, in this case, a mobile domicile that happens to be running on a Cybertruck, which happens to be an energy platform. And so when we think about all of those things, the confluence of AI software and our technology, our understanding of why systems are smart, how do they become smart, and how do they really achieve the things that our customers dream of, we think that we're in a good position to do that fairly quickly. And so the first phase of CyberLandr, if you will, started in 2017, late 2017, and then it entered into a phase of usability design. You know, could we make something this small that works well in a Cybertruck? And now we're into market validation. And the market validation has been off the chart. We're seeing, you know, love marks everywhere concerning our product. And so I think our target audience, which is fundamentally us as well, see the vision, they see the agility that comes with an invisible camper, and they see that this can change life for many people, you know, across the board. So it's not like we just got the idea last week and then set out to do it. We have been working on this for many years.
So a lot of viewers have been emailing in, and they're very excited about the CyberLandr and what it could potentially give them. Obviously, software is important. It sounds like you can put in a lot of features that have just never been in any RVs before. But a lot of viewers know that you have a background, both of you, in software, and you mentioned that you had some hardware experience. I'd love to hear more examples about what kind of hardware stuff you've been working on.
Let's take, for example, that customer in Los Angeles County. They wanted to be able to stream live video off their buses, but they also wanted live real-time analytics. How many people are on the bus? Has a weapon been detected? Can we use two-factor authentication for the bus driver before they start the bus to make sure it's actually that person and things like that? And so to implement all of that, we had to have what we call an edge appliance, a computer that's on board that can work even when there's no internet connection and things like that. And so we created hardware that uses NVIDIA processors so that we've got 15 teraflops of compute processing power on there so that we can do things like count the number of passengers, know exactly the location, know how many people got on and off at the last bus stop, things like that. And so we put that in place over the last several years, and we'll leverage that for the CyberLandr. So we've got that AI processor, we've got experience with the AI, doing things like detecting people evading fares in the New York subway system. And we were able to use the camera they already had on the wall to tell if any one of the 4 turnstiles had somebody evading a fare, whether they went over it, under it, jimmied their way through it. We could detect that with really high accuracy. And so those same skills can be translated right over to this.
So I want to talk about some more features that are in the CyberLandr because it's just packed full of them, and I have so many questions about them. When I was looking at the counter, it looked like if that countertop is going to be at a standard height of like 36 inches, that it would stick out of the bed of the truck. So I'm assuming that this has to go up and down. And that, as the contractor in me starts bringing out questions of like, how does that work with plumbing? Because that means, things are going to have to be flexible. So can you walk me through this thing has to pop up, sinks have to pop up, showers have to pop up. Like, how does that all work?
I love that you put so much thought into it. And most of the people who have reserved have done the same thing. We've been bombarded with questions and we absolutely love them. They say, well, how can you do this? Or have you thought about this kind of a thing? We really loved engaging with them on that. So again, linear actuators is our tool of choice for that type of thing, right? To raise the counter up and down. And I don't know if you're familiar with a drag chain. A drag chain is basically, it looks like a chain on your bicycle, but it's a big, thick plastic thing that you run hoses and cables and wires through, right? And so you'll see those on everything from heavy machinery that's digging ditches to inside computer servers, things like that. And so we use things like that to control the bend radius and to control the path that it takes so that you can keep them reliable over a long period of time.
So we put out these questions to our Patreons last week, and we said we're going to be talking to the founders of CyberLandr, and boy, did we get hit with a lot of questions. One of the big questions was the bathroom door, which I thought, again, kind of funny that you get like very specific things, but I guess bathroom doors are important. How does that work? Because this goes up and down, the door also has to be made so that it functions once it's, in its up and down state. People were asking how the door works.
Great question. That's actually one of the biggest engineering challenges. Actually having the camper go up and down was easier than the doors. And we've been through lots of different door designs. And what we finally settled on was a roll top door, right? Something that rolls up so that you have little sections that are really flexible. But then it's like, well, nobody wants to lift a garage door up and down each time they go in and out, right? So it needs to be powered. And it's like, okay, where do you put the switches and that kind of thing? And we said, you know what, as modern as this is, and with the compute power we have on board, let's do something that's convenient for the user. So what we came up with was a combination of an authorized user placing their foot on the step to go in. And so that action is the switch.
Wow.
And this concept transitions into everything about the AI parts of CyberLandr, where our objective is to detect intent. And intent is a very difficult thing, when humans are involved, because we're so unpredictable. But there are some switches, as Lance pointed out. There's a good chance that if you started to raise your leg toward the step, and you are a recognized, authenticated person for that CyberLandr, we're going to open the door. I mean, it makes sense to do that. Many other types of intents are easily detected and computed. And so by using machine vision, we're able to bake into that vision dozens, perhaps hundreds of different intent recognizers or scenario recognizers, such as, hey, the children just left the tent and it's 2 a.m. Those kinds of alerts, I think moms would appreciate, some dads as well. You want to be alerted when odd things occur in your environment, whether it's camping or whether it's urban adventures that you're on. AI gives us the ability to identify those different types of switches and other sensors too. So we're not only focused on vision sensors. We have many sensors in mind.
Just to be clear, Bill was not announcing a new product. He was talking about a possibility that you could do with AI.
Another possibility is recognizing bears in the area. We're not announcing that, but once you build a software infrastructure capable of that, all sorts of things can occur, of course, through over-the-air updates.
We talked about the shower and the sinks. So in that kind of vein where you're going to have a shower in this bathroom along with a toilet, is there going to be a door between the kind of living space area and your bathroom? Because I know that you don't want sounds, smells, moisture necessarily seeping through. So, and I haven't seen any in any of the renderings. I'm just curious.
Yeah, we actually left that out of the renderings just to simplify the rendering, but you'll have an identical door to the main entrance door to the bathroom as well.
And then let's talk about the toilet. So you use a dry toilet. For people who've never used a dry toilet before, can you just kind of give us a rundown of what that is like and like to maintain maybe?
A dry toilet really simplified all of this for us. In fact, one of the questions we first got when we were showing the renders is, how does the toilet flush? Do you have a pipe that goes through the tailgate? And it's like, no, it's dry flush, so there's none of that, right? One of the benefits of dry flush is it does save water, right? Another benefit is there's no black water tank to deal with. You never have to empty it, clean it, winterize it, anything else. There's no big heavy cassette of sludge to take and dump anywhere. So what a dry flush toilet does is it gives you, in essence, a great big long bag. And each flush takes some of that bag, twists it, seals it off, sucks it down, and gives you a new bag. And so that bag lines the toilet bowl, so there's never a toilet bowl to clean either. And so each flush takes a little bit more of that bag. And after about 12 or 15 flushes, that bag has been completely used up. Then you lift the toilet lid up, and there's a bag that bag sits inside of. And so you just lift up that bag, twist it like any garbage lighter, and throw it in the trash, just like you would a dirty diaper. Now, we'd recommend you find a trash that's not going to have animals tearing things up in it, right? Because nobody wants that mess.
So, I mean, this is, I think when I was a baby, you had something
Diaper
called
Genie.
The Diaper Genie, and it was very similar.
Very similar.
And so that's going to cut down on smells, I'm assuming, and all the toilet stuff that most people aren't going to want to deal with. And I mean, this sounds a lot nicer than most RVs, I'll be honest.
Well, it eliminates black water entirely, and black water is like your own sewage treatment plant.
So let's talk about water for a second, because I know that you're going to be using some kind of filtration system. Can you walk us through how much water the CyberLandr is going to have, and how does the filtration work?
So we'd like to give you exact capacities, but we can't until we get those final numbers from Tesla, right? So right now we're saying 40 gallons usable. Do we have 40 gallons? No. And 40 gallons would be a lot, and it'd be a lot of weight, and we wouldn't want to add that anyway. So, it really makes sense to recycle that water, filter and make it good. And it's funny, some people say, well, I'm not sure I like water recycling. It's like, well, all water is recycled water. Either your municipality did it or nature did it, right? But it's all recycled. You just want to make sure you have a really good filtration system. So we're doing a 4-stage filtration with UV sterilization. So, it doesn't matter if there's Giardia or viruses, the UV will wipe those out, even if something got through the filters. So, with the activated charcoal, the flavor should be great. So we actually filter all the water coming in. You go to some of these RV parks, campgrounds, or fill up at a gas station with water and stuff, and you never know what you're going to get. And most of the time that water doesn't taste great. So we actually run all of that water through the filter. So by the time it comes to you, it's been cleaned and purified no matter what the source was. So if you're out boondocking, and the most limiting factor for most boondockers is they're out of water, right? They've got to go empty some tanks, and they've got to get more water. So by recirculating that, we dramatically reduce the amount of gray water, right? And we extend your fresh water by several times. But even then, if you're drinking water, you're going to be depleting that over that time, right? So you can go to any clean source, stream, lake. If that water's good and clear, you could pour it in the sink. It'll go down, be filtered, and you've added water without having to drive back into town to load up.
So another question we got a lot from Patrons on the list was the bed/chairs. These chairs become the bed, and it looks really nifty. As a CGI, it looks amazing. It seems like, why didn't someone think of this before? But a lot of people were asking us, Zach and Jesse, will this work? As if we would know. I don't know if we would know it would work. But so basically, it looked like it was a regular chair that folds, and then it sits down onto the countertop. I guess that's what gets support on one end. Can you talk us through how you came up with this design, and how's it going to work?
Yeah, so when we came up with the design for the CyberLandr, we looked at it and we said, most RVs waste about 70% of their space. You've got, between the bed and the dinette set, you've got about 70% of your RV that is dedicated to things that don't get used that much, right? They may get 8 hours each, but it's kind of wasted space. It'd be nice if you could repurpose that space. And of course, with the Cybertruck, we didn't want to have a big bed hanging out over the cab. It would look silly and it would destroy the aerodynamics. And so we said, okay, we can make this work. But the one thing that has to work just right is you have to be able to easily convert the chairs into a bed. And they have to be comfortable chairs and a comfortable bed. And so we understand that that's a key element to make all of this work. And so we said, okay, let's put the effort into this to make it right. And what we also noticed was that people that RV for more than a few days get kind of frustrated. They can't ever really relax because they're either seated straight up in that dinette set with their knees hitting the other person's knees and their toes bumping into each other, and their knees whacking the support brace under it. And they just can't ever, or they're laying flat out in the bed, right? They can never just really sit back and recline like you would in a reclining chair. So he said, this chair has to do 3 things. It has to be able to sit up, it has to be able to recline, and it has to be able to convert into a bed. And so that meant we had to change the basic structure of a chair in order to make it work. And the more I worked on it, the more I said, you know what, this has some commonality with ladders in terms of the strength it needs to have and the ability to transform. And I said, I know some great designers up in Utah, Devos Brands, that has worked on ladders and chairs for many, many years. I said, those are my pros. So I called them up and said, hey, you guys want a fun challenge? And they said, yeah. So that's one of the patents we have that's pending is actually on the chair and the way that works. So Devos Brands is working out all of that for us with the expertise they've gleaned from all those years. So yeah, if we had to do that on top of manufacturing everything else by the end of this year, impossible, right? So we've tried to partner with the best we can find in each of these different areas to try and hit these dates.
I think another question about the bed that people ask me, again, I don't know why they thought I would know, is how do you get in and out of the bed? I guess because they're worried that if it does sit on the counter, that the height is probably higher than a typical bed.
Great question. So that support that comes down the back will actually have an integrated step. So as you put your foot on it, it will flatten and give you a nice, comfortable step to step up on.
Let's see. The other question that we had from people was the floor. There's something about a heated floor. Can you explain how that works?
Yeah, so it's a radiant heated floor. The most efficient way to heat something with a high ceiling or that has doors that open and close a lot is with radiant heat, because it heats the people and the objects and not the air, right? And so we said that's going to be the most efficient way, most comfortable way to heat something like this. And so that motivated us to go to the porcelain tile floor, one-piece porcelain tile floor, because that would give us a good thermal mass that would radiate the heat very evenly and be very comfortable. And so it would also give us a really durable floor that you don't have to worry about if you come in with cleats on after the game or something, you're going to tear it up like you would with linoleum or something else, right? And so we really like that material choice. There is a downside to just if you have only radiant floor heating, and that is it doesn't heat the air, right? And so we actually have air conditioning, forced air that has air conditioning and heating as well. So it will provide heat to the air as needed.
So I'm just curious where that forced air heating and I'm assuming cooling system goes, because I feel like I've seen the entire Cyberlander and I just don't know where that is.
We still have a few tricks up our sleeves. So as we get closer to production, we'll be revealing that to the reservation holders through bi-weekly emails with updates on things. And so as we settle on the exact implementation of that, we'll start to share it with people and show where that fits.
Now, one question that I had gotten, because I think some other people had heard that there was going to be a one-piece porcelain tile floor. Are you worried about the tile breaking when you're driving the Cybertruck? Because, it should be made out of stainless steel. It should be an exoskeleton. We've never seen a truck built like this. But if there's any flex in the bed, is that going to lead to any kind of cracking of the floor if you go over some huge bump going 70 miles an hour down the highway?
This will be the most stable truck platform in history, right? It's a one-piece aluminum casting, right? This will be a super stiff structure with stainless steel on top of that, this ridiculously strong composite on top of that, foam on top of that, and then the porcelain. So this is an insanely stiff structure. And then keep in mind that the Cyberlander is a box, and boxes are incredibly strong. And so it's an incredibly strong box made of incredibly strong composites. So we've got a super, super stable platform to build on. We wouldn't find that platform on any other product, honestly.
And you said that there's going to be some foam between the porcelain and the bed. So it's not like you're tightening it down onto the bed of the truck. And if there's any, there'll be a little bit of give a little bit of cushion in between the two.
Another question we got was about the shower drain. People seem to be really worried that water's going to get in from the shower to the living space. And I was like, I can't help you with that. But Lance, maybe you can.
We'll obviously have a drain integrated in there, right? That grabs that water and actually pumps it to the gray water tank where it can be filtered and recycled.
And I assume you have to park the Cybertruck on level ground before operation?
Yeah, that is one of those wonderful things about the Cybertruck, right? It has an air suspension with self-leveling. So before you deploy the Cyberlander, you level the Cybertruck. And that just ensures that we've got a nice level platform to go up and down with the Cyberlander, and that you're going to get proper drainage, right? And so you will know if you're not able to level it. The Cybertruck will tell you, or the Cyberlander will tell you it's not level.
And I think maybe the number one question people asked us was, can you remove Cyberlander from the back of the truck, and is that an easy process?
In the focus groups, we found that the majority of people said they probably would never remove it, which was really interesting to us. They said, we see this as kind of the ultimate SUV. But once it's in there, I don't ever want to take it out. I just want to be ready for anything, And that was interesting. But, there was a group that was almost as large saying, this is still a truck to me. I still need to be able to use it as a truck, right? And so we said, yeah, the Cyberlander has to be removable, and it has to be relatively easy, right? And so we worked with the focus group and talked about many different ways of doing it. How about a system that lifts it up in the garage so that it's out of the way and you can not lose any floor space, that kind of a thing. But there were too many people whose garages had too low of a ceiling to pull that off. And so what the focus groups settled in on was a Dolly system would be the best, something that just easily grabs it, extracts it, and can put it right back in when you're ready to go. So we're working on several different designs of the Dolly system now. And once we've settled in on what we think is the best one, we'll share that with the Cyberlander community to get their feedback, see what they think.
So I'd love to know a little bit more about the folding. So I know that you have the 4 actuators that are going to raise and lower the Cyberlander. Then you have the kind of the bathroom section that slides in.
Yeah, is that manual or is that actuated as well?
That will use linear actuators of some type. There are many different types of linear actuators, and so that will be powered as well.
I assume that you can't have the bed set up and then close the Cyberlander. So you're going to have to kind of stow away the chairs and make sure that you don't have how much room are we talking? Could I leave the plates out on the counter, or is everything going to have to go away?
Anytime you want to move things, right, you want to clean that counter, right? If you're going to go bounce down the road, everything needs to be put away. So it needs to be ship shape, as they say, right? Everything in its place. And that could be a real hassle if you didn't have the intelligence in the Cyberlander that we'll have. But with the sensors, we can tell you, oh, hey, this chair needs to be put away, or hey, you left this in the wrong place, kind of a thing, right? And so it can help you, but for most people, I think it'll be second nature pretty quickly. Fold chairs down, put them in between, up near the kitchen counter, and then hit the button, and it will do its thing.
Now, if people were kind of waiting until they saw who the people behind this were, and maybe now they're comfortable and they want to put some money down, can you tell us about the pricing, when they're expected to get it, and how the deposit works?
The regular retail price is $49,995, so basically $50,000, right? During this launch promotion, everybody can get $5,000 off with just a $100 reservation. So great return on investment, 50 times return on your investment there. So if you want to increase your discount, you can do that by putting more down. So if you put 1,000 down instead of 100, we'll match that 1,000, give you another 1,000 off. If you want even more, you can go to 2,000. We've actually sold out of the 5,000, the 4,000, and the 3,000 already. So there are 2,000 level and 1,000 level still remaining.
How long do you think it would be before they could get their Cyberlander?
So we're trying to match up the Cyberlander with their Cybertruck order, right? Because people ordered at all different times, so they'll get them at different times. So as much as possible, we're trying to make sure their Cyberlander is ready when their Cybertruck is ready, rather than just going in order of when each Cyberlander order came in. And so What we'll be doing in the next few weeks is sending out emails to all the reservation holders with instructions on how to find their reservation number for their Cybertruck. And then they can share that with us and we'll monitor that so we know when theirs needs to be ready.
Now, if Jesse and I had come up with this, and if Cybertruck was out, I think we would have probably built some kind of prototype out of cardboard and plywood or something. Have you guys built any kind of prototype? And without the Cybertruck, how's that work?
It's the first thing we did. I placed an order with Home Depot for literally a truckload of foam board, and it arrived mangled. So I ordered another truckload of foam board, and when it arrived, we got to work. And before we even started doing the engineering drawings, I went out and hacked it up, cut it out, and made a life-size version of it to see if it would really work. Can you be in this 3D space? And that gave us the ability to move things around, try different configurations, and much to my surprise, it was like, yeah, this really does work. And in some ways, it feels bigger than the pickup campers I've been in the past. In most pickup campers, if you've got somebody at the sink or range, everybody's fighting to get past to the dinette set or the bed or the bathroom or whatever else, right? But with this layout, with the kitchen over in the corner, people don't have to walk over the top of them to get to, say, the refrigerator or the bathroom or whatever else. So in many ways, I think this little camper will feel much bigger than it is, right? And will have much better ceiling height than you have in a typical pickup camper or RV.
Just the fact that the prototype that you're working on isn't in the Cybertruck yet. And so are you going to wait until you get a hold of a Cybertruck before you finalize the design?
Yeah, so based on that design validation prototype, then we started doing the engineering. Those engineering drawings were what drove the renders you see. So they're highly detailed, they're functional. It's not just a make-believe cartoon kind of a thing, right? And we used our best math to estimate the dimensions, but we need Tesla's final dimension to get it just exactly right. But we know we're within a couple of inches in every regard. And so we can get close, and then we can refine that very quickly because it's really a CAD-CAM system. You take the computer-aided design, and that translates right through to the CNC machines and things that actually cut out the materials and prep it. So we had hoped to have a prototype made from the composite panels ready in time for our debut. But the manufacturer was so backed up with other things, and they make many different thicknesses of this, and so you have to wait until they're manufacturing the thickness you need, right? So we had to wait for that, and that was scheduled a few weeks beyond when we would have our debut. So those actually shipped yesterday, and so we'll be making a full-size one based on our best estimates of the dimensions out of the composite panels in the coming weeks. And so, that'll be the second of what will be at least a half a dozen, probably more like 8 prototypes by the time we're to the final production prototype. So
questions came in about the 360-degree security system, which sounds really cool because that's something normally when you're in a camper, you're just relying on a kind of a flimsy door, and that's what's going to keep everything out, right? But so you've got a 360 security system. Can you tell us what that does and how does it work?
Yeah, so that is a natural outgrowth of that work we were doing with StreamIt before for the transit agencies, and that where we were doing 360-degree vision on a bus and also the interior, right? And so we're just bringing that over to CyberLandr, so you'll have a 360-degree view around the vehicle, and while you're sleeping, it's detecting if objects are entering the area. That can control the lighting, exterior lighting. It can provide a warning if, like in Bill's example, say there's a bear in camp. You might want to know that. You might not. You might want to just let it do its thing. But if you wanted to know, it could alert you and say, bear detected.
And then I saw somewhere that you are working, or at least in talks with Starlink, and that this could possibly, CyberLandr could have Starlink. I guess you could, go out and pop it on the roof or something. Can you tell us what stage you're at with Starlink on that?
We had first started talking to Starlink about a project for New Jersey Transit. They were looking for the best way to get internet on their passenger rail line. And, you're really going to have a hard time doing it with LTE. regular cellular connections because they're moving. When it gets busy, you lose bandwidth, that kind of a thing. And so we looked at it and said, you know what, a good way to provide that would probably be with Starlink satellite. So I reached out to Starlink and they liked the idea, but they said, we're not ready for mobile yet. The software has not been developed to let it move from satellite to satellite yet, right? We need it in one location for now. And so we'd already created that relationship. And then when we started working on CyberLandr, I said, this is ideal. And so I talked to Starlink again. I said, hey, we want to integrate Starlink in this RV we're coming out with. And they said, that's awesome. That's what we built Starlink for, is to take internet where it hasn't gone before, right? And that's what we're doing. So we thought that was transformative. It really did make it so you could take your living room with your streaming 4K movies from Netflix or whatnot, right? Take your office with you because you can get things done and not, at 56 kilobits or something, something truly usable. And so we think that really changes things.
And so how is it going to be like integrated with CyberLandr, or is it just going to be kind of the Dishy McFlatface that we've come to know and love, that you kind of just set it up somewhere?
So it will be the Dishy McFlatface. Mine's on order. When it arrives, we'll start to integrate it, see the best way we can integrate it. In the worst case scenario, it will be a you set it out kind of a thing. But we're really hoping to do a nice job of integrating it as elegantly as possible.
And I think I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the fact that this is going in a Cybertruck, which is going to have, we hope, power outlets and so forth. I mean, we were told about some of them. We don't know about all of them. So how does CyberLandr get its power? Does it also power back the Cybertruck with its solar panels? How does that all work?
Yeah, we've been waiting for final specifications. A couple of weeks ago, Elon's confirmed that the power would be bidirectional. Now, we still don't know if that's through the supercharging port, the regular charging port, or if he's talking about the 110 and 220 volt outlets in the bed. We can work with either scenario, right? It just means you'd have to have a plug going into the regular charge port. But yes, the idea is the CyberLandr will use the power from the Cybertruck. It makes no sense to add more weight with inferior batteries when Tesla does the most amazing job anyway, right? So we tap into that, and if we're going to take, we need to give back, right? So the solar panels are there to help reduce that load on the truck and to even give back.
I know that a lot of viewers are going to just want to know every, last detail. Do you have like any estimates? Like, let's say it's, freezing outside and, I want to, have my heated floor. I want to have the water, I want to take a nice hot shower, and then I want to come out and I want to, go on Starlink and, do some other things. I mean, there's a refrigerator, there's heated floors, there's a filtration system with pumps, there's a cooktop, there's heating. So, I mean, it sounds like I could, if I wanted to, draw a lot of power. I think it's definitely up to the user to be responsible with that power. But are you worried about, max draw, or is there going to be some artificial limits that you can put in place?
We can help them manage that by watching what's being used and that kind of thing. But really, there's a lot of power there. I would say, do your thing, enjoy. There's enough power that they'll be able to keep going and do what they want to do in most cases. But some people will want to watch it very closely and be very miserly with it. And, we'll give them the information they need to make those choices.
So finally, we're going to be getting our Cybertruck. We're, I think, in the top 20, so we should be getting it one of the first. And we'll probably be in Austin. You guys are in Austin. I'm thinking we should probably drive by your workshop, your factory, and see if you got one ready to test when it comes off the line. Now, I can't believe I'm saying this, but it could be this year.
It could be this year. And, I mean, the nice part would be it would hopefully save us, having to book a hotel.
Yeah, you'd be saving us quite a bit. So we might just drop by. What do you think?
You are awesome. Love it. You're welcome to Cyberland in our parking lot. And hang out, camp for a few days. We'd love to have you visit and try it out.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Lance. Thank you, Bill, so much for answering all these questions. Hopefully, we got a lot of questions answered. If there are people, who are going to have a ton more questions, where should they go to get those questions to you?
Best address is sales@cyberlandr.com.
Great. Well, thank you so much, guys. That was great answering all those questions. I'm really excited to see if you guys can pull this off. And yeah, maybe even later this year, we'll be camping out in a Cyberlander.
Thanks, Zach. Thanks, Jesse.
Thank you.